found out my husband was secretly my cousin. This is the kind of thing you read about in weird internet threads and think, there's no way that actually happens to real people. Except it did. To me. My name's Leela, I'm 30 years old, and I've been married for 4 years to a man I thought was my soulmate. We met at a friend's party when I was 25. I still remember the way he made me laugh that night. Actually laugh from my stomach. He had this easy charm, not the fake kind you get from guys who think they're God's gift to women, but real, warm, gentle. His name was Chris. He was tall, dark-haired, wore those thick-rimmed glasses that made him look kind of nerdy but cute. We talked for hours that night. By the time I got home, I was already texting my best friend. I think I just met someone serious. And I did. Things moved fast. He was thoughtful, consistent. He brought me flowers just because. Listened when I talked about work drama. Made me pancakes on Sundays. It wasn't fireworks or drama or toxic highs and lows. It was calm, safe. It was love, the way I always hoped love would feel. We got married after 2 years of dating. A small wedding, backyard style, just our close friends and a few relatives. Nothing over the top. That's one of the things we bonded over. We both came from messy families and didn't like to dwell on it. Chris was adopted, and he didn't know much about his biological parents. He'd grown up in the system for a while before getting adopted at age 6. He told me once, I don't really care where I came from. I care where I'm going. And I respected that. But here's where it starts to get weird. It started with a Christmas gift. Last year, my sister bought me one of those DNA test kits. You know, the kind that tells you about your ancestry and health stuff. She said she got it on sale and thought it'd be a fun little project. I didn't even think twice about it. I spat in the tube, mailed it off, and forgot about it. A few weeks later, I got the results. I logged in while I was sitting on the couch next to Chris. We were watching some dumb crime docuseries, and I remember laughing ooh, let's see if I'm royalty or part Viking or something. At first, it was what I expected. Mostly European, some Irish, a bit of German, but then I saw a section labeled DNA matches, and right at the top under close family, it said, Christopher W. Likely, half-sibling, uncle, or first cousin. I literally stared at the screen like it was a glitch. I turned to Chris and said, "Oh, this thing is saying you're my cousin." He laughed at first, actually laughed out loud. No way. That's gotta be wrong. But the app gave us a shared centimorgan count. For anyone who doesn't know what that is, it's how they measure the amount of shared DNA. The number was high, too high to be some distant fifth cousin. It was in the range of someone who shares a lot of blood with you. At that point, we both sort of froze. I said, "This is probably a mistake. Maybe your info leaked into mine or something," but he got quiet. Not confused quiet, panicked quiet. I know that silence now. It's the kind of silence people make when their brain is spinning 1,000 miles an hour. I asked him again, gently this time. "Chris, do you know something?" He shook his head, but his eyes, they weren't meeting mine. That night, I couldn't sleep. I went down a rabbit hole reading about DNA test errors, how common mismatches were, how they calculated those matches. Everything said the same thing. It's not perfect, but it's pretty accurate, especially when the match is that close. I brought it up again the next day. Chris brushed it off, said the system must be off. "Those things are for fun, not science," he told me, but he wouldn't take the test himself. That's when I started digging. I requested access to my full family tree through the DNA site. I called my mom and asked questions I hadn't thought to ask before, about her side of the family, about her cousins, people I'd never met. I even asked her, did anyone in the family give a child up for adoption? There was a long pause on the phone. She said, "Why are you asking that?" I told her, very gently, that I thought there might be a weird connection between Chris and me. She got quiet. Then finally, she said, "Your Aunt Diane had a baby when she was 19. She was sent away for a year, and when she came back, the baby was gone. No one ever talked about it again." I asked, "Was the baby a boy?" She said yes. I felt physically sick. I called Chris right after and told him everything. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, I think that might be me." Turns out, his adoptive parents did know a few details about his birth family. They had a name, Diane, and an old birth certificate tucked in a box somewhere. It was her, my mom's sister, which makes Chris my first cousin. My husband, my partner, my cousin. We sat across from each other in our living room that night, completely numb. I couldn't even cry. It didn't feel real. This was a man I'd built a life with, slept next to every night, talked about having kids with. And now I was looking at him like he was a stranger. We didn't speak for hours. When I finally said something, it was, "What do we do now?" He didn't have an answer. Neither did I. The next few days were like living in a fog. I went through the motions, woke up, showered, ate, but I wasn't really there. Every time I looked at Chris, I saw my husband, and then, like a flicker behind that, I saw my cousin. It was like my brain couldn't hold both truths at once. He tried to keep things normal. He made coffee like usual, put on music in the kitchen. He even made pancakes on Sunday like nothing had changed. But everything had changed. I finally told him I needed space. He moved into the guest room. We stopped touching, stopped talking, except for small, stiff conversations like, "Do you need anything from the store?" Or, "I have a work call at 3. And every night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, asking myself the same question over and over. How did we not know? But the real question underneath that was scarier: does it matter? We didn't grow up together. We didn't know. There was no malice, no manipulation, just two people who met by chance and fell in love. But that didn't change the reality. We were related, by blood, first cousins, not distant, not a fluke. And then came the next wave of horror. What if we'd had kids? That thought gripped me in the middle of the night like a cold hand on my throat. I pulled out my laptop and started reading about genetic risks. I went deep into medical articles, forums, stories from others in the same situation. Turns out, cousin marriages aren't as uncommon as you'd think. In some cultures, they're normal. But the risk is there, especially if the family has a history of genetic conditions. I kept thinking, what if we'd tried for a baby and something happened? What if we'd blamed ourselves, not even knowing why? It made me feel physically ill. I didn't tell my family right away. I didn't know how. How do you even start that conversation? "Hey mom, remember that guy you walked me down the aisle to marry? Yeah, turns out he's your nephew." Eventually, I told my sister. She was the one who gave me the DNA kit in the first place, so it kind of felt like she deserved to know. She was quiet for a long time, then said, "Leela, I'm so sorry. I never would have given you that thing if I'd known." I cut her off. "It's not your fault." Because it wasn't. It wasn't anyone's fault, really. Just a series of missing pieces, and
lost
here's the
records,
hardest part
and a
to
family
admit.
secret
I still
no one
loved
ever
him.
thought would come to
Everything we
light.
had, it was
Chris
real.
and I
The
finally
late
sat
night
down one
talks,
night,
the road
maybe
trips,
2 weeks after
the quiet
everything came
mornings
out.
and inside
We talked
jokes.
for hours.
It wasn't fake.
About our
It wasn't
childhoods,
wrong
about
until
how
it
this
was.
changes
I
things,
looked at him and said,
about whether
if
we
we'd never
still
taken
felt the
that
same
test,
about each
we'd
other.
still be us. And he nodded. But we did. We cried together for hours. Eventually, we made the decision. We separated. There was no dramatic fight, no shouting or slamming doors, just tears, hugs, a kind of grief that didn't have a name. He moved out a few weeks later. We filed for an annulment instead of a divorce. Legally, it made more sense, considering the circumstances. And emotionally, it felt cleaner, like unwriting something that never should have been written in the first place. I haven't told most of my extended family. I'm not ready. The few who do know have been kind but awkward, like they want to say something comforting but don't know what. It's been 6 months now. Chris and I still talk sometimes. Nothing romantic, just checking in, making sure we're okay. Because here's the thing, I don't hate him, I can't. He didn't do anything to me. He was me in a way, my partner, my person. And then suddenly, my past. I've started therapy. Trying to process the layers of this, grief, confusion, loss, love, it's messy. I'm dating again slowly, cautiously. But every time someone asks me, "So what happened with your ex-husband?" I just smile and say, it's a long story. Because how do you explain something like this? How do you tell someone that your love story turned into a DNA twist ending? I still ask myself, if I could go back, would I want to know? Part of me wishes we never took that test, that we could have lived our lives in ignorance, happy and unaware. But the other part of me knows the truth matters, even when it hurts, even when it shatters everything. Because at the end of the day, secrets have a way of finding their way to the surface. And love, real love, should never be built on something that was never meant to be. You know what's weird? Sometimes I still wake up and forget for a second, just a second, like I'll roll over and reach for him out of habit. And then it hits me all over again. He's not there, not because of some breakup or cheating or falling out, but because of something we couldn't have known. And that's what I keep circling back to. We didn't do anything wrong. We fell in love. We got married. We built a life together. And it was good, better than anything I'd known before. Sometimes it throws you into the kind of situation you can't plan for, where there's no right way to respond. People ask me, "Are you okay now?" And yeah, I am mostly. I still feel grief, but it's not sharp like it was. It's quieter now, softer, like background noise you learn to live with, and I still think about him. Sometimes I wonder, if we'd met a few states away, or a few years earlier or later, would the outcome have changed? Maybe, but I try not to dwell on the what-ifs. Instead, I focus on what I learned. I learned that love can be beautiful and painful at the same time. That the truth, no matter how devastating, is always better than living a lie. and that even in the strangest, most heartbreaking situations, there can be healing. You know, before this happened, I used to think people who found out something shocking about their partner just knew, like there had to be signs, some gut feeling, some red flag, but sometimes there isn't. Sometimes it's just two people, trying their best, and getting hit by a truth no one saw coming. So now when people share their weird family secrets or say, "You won't believe what I found out," I listen. I don't judge, because I've lived it. And if you're listening to this and thinking, "That could never happen to me," I hope you're right. But if it ever does, I hope you meet it with compassion, for yourself, and for the person on the other side of it. Because sometimes love doesn't end with a villain. Sometimes it just ends with a truth too big to carry together. And that's okay. If you've ever been through something that shattered your sense of reality, if you've ever had to walk away from someone you still love, I see you. You're not broken, you're human, and you'll be okay, eventually. Thanks for listening to my story, and if you're still here, please consider subscribing. This channel is where I share stories like mine, raw, real, and honest. Because I think the world needs more truth, even when it's messy. I'll see you in the next one, and until then, take care of your heart. It's stronger than you think.